And up next is Business News with Tolulope Ogujobi. Tolu, what do you have for us today?
Well, a lot. It's Monday afternoon, and let's get into the world of business. Let's start as part of efforts to deepen Nigeria's open banking ecosystem. The Central Bank of Nigeria has announced ongoing work to standardize application program interfaces across the financial services sector. Now, this move aims to ensure secure, consistent, and data-sharing processes between banks and the third-party financial technology providers. Speaking at the second quarter of Regulators Forum put together by the FinTech NGR in Lagos, the CBN Director of Payment System and Policy, Mr. Musa Jimo, disclosed that the Apex Bank is developing a unified API standard to streamline how FinTech companies interact with multiple banks, themed beyond compliance, unlocking innovation with Nigeria's open banking framework. The event gathered key stakeholders from the financial and technology sectors. According to the director, the standardization effort will not only reduce complexity for developers and the financial service providers, but also bolster data security and ensure compliance to regulatory requirements. The federal government says the 60-day administrative pause on the 25 million naira levy by the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria will remain in place. The pause will continue in the mid to long term pending a broader legislative review of the contentious annual dues cap. The decision follows widespread criticism of the FRCN's 25 million naira fixed annual levy for public interest entities. Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, confirmed this in a statement made available to media in Abuja. She said the government would maintain the pause while legislative reforms are considered to address stakeholders' concerns. In March this year, the federal government established a team working committee for stakeholders' engagement, which included representatives from NECA, MAN, NASIMA, and other private sector bodies, alongside FRCN team. Dr. Oduwole affirms President Tinubu's administration's commitment to transparency and pro-business regulatory framework. President Bola Tinubu last week Thursday signed 4 finance bills into law. They are now acts in a set of major reforms aimed at restructuring the tax system in Nigeria. The reforms are part of the administration's broader efforts to make the tax structure more equitable and inclusive. The new laws, which is described as pro-poor, will simplify revenue collection, reduce the tax burden on some individuals and businesses, and also help to raise much-needed government revenue by making collection more efficient. Co-founder and CEO Budget, Mr. Olusegun Nigbinde, and was on our live business program, Business Nigeria, last Friday. He spoke on the impact of the newly signed bill on the larger economy.
In my own view, I believe that if we are going to improve tax to GDP ratio, it means that we will have to do a lot more work to incentivize formalization. If we do not incentivize formalization, it becomes very difficult. I also have to be honest about which informal sectors have we allowed people to pay taxes, some form of taxes to. The other thing also we look at is also growing the economy. If we don't grow the economy significantly, look at the things we did around the liberalization of the telecom sector, look at things we did around the banking sector and see how much taxation came out of those places. So we also have to find growth shoots within the economy. Do we have to look at agriculture? Because that entire sector is nearly not taxed. And that sector is close to 25% of our GDP. So do we have to look into that environment? The informal sector, do we look into that? Or do we formalize that? So there are also wider conversations beyond us just saying we have adjusted a tax law and that will now shoot up our tax to GDP. Yeah, obviously, this will help in terms of removing the duplication of taxes at the state level. Because, I mean, we have built now this composite tax system, and I hope states are faithful and truthful to this process because this is the law. The other thing also is that the law of lowest SMEs and low-income businesses will also not pay taxes, or even payee also would also, so low-income states, I mean, states, people with less than $1 million naira or around thereabout, we are yet to see what the final figures will look like. We also not pay payee. So by the time you put that all together, some states will struggle with that because of how income bands within those states are very, very much low. But what I say is that when we say we want to improve tax to GDP, this is an important part of it. This is a crucial step in it. But there are wider issues about, we have 25% of the
Well, we'll stay with that conversation on Business Nigeria today. But moving on now, shares indices rose in Asia today as a revival of trade talks between the United States and Canada helped risk sentiment, while the dollar dipped on concerns that United States job data could show weakness to justify rate quotes. Canada had said it had rescinded its digital services tax in a bid to advance trade negotiations, bowing to pressure from President Donald Trump. The talks are aimed at getting a deal done by July 21st, extending Trump's original July 9th deadline for his reciprocal tariffs. Nasdaq futures rose another 0.4%, S&P 500 added 0.3%, Eurostock 50 futures rose 0.3%, FTSE futures were flat and DAX futures gained 0.4%. The bullish sentiment spilled over into Japan's Nikkei, which rose 1%. South Korea's stocks gained 0.7%. MSCI's broadest index of Asian Pacific shares outside Japan dipped 0.2%. Chinese blue chips edged up 0.1%. A survey showed manufacturing improved slightly in June. Now, China's manufacturing activity shrank for a third straight month in June, highlighting pressure on policymakers to boost domestic demand after a fragile trade truce with the United States. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics Purchasing Powers Managers Index rose 49.7 in June, showing an improvement of May's reading of 49.5, though still staying below the 50 mark that separates expansion from contraction. According to the Bureau's senior statistician, Onige Zhao, the sub-index tracking production rose to 51 and the gauge track new orders ticked higher to 50.2, now indicating improvement in industrial activities. Inventory and employment levels at factories, however, continue to decline, coming in at 48 and 47.9 respectively. The non-manufacturing PMI rose to 50.5 from 50.3 in May. Services subsector slipped 50.1. Construction accelerated to 52.8. The 2025 China-Europe Business Summit concluded in Brussels, Belgium, marking 50 years of China's EU diplomatic relations. Over 100 companies and institutions attended, discussing economic trade and cooperation. Keynote speakers emphasized globalization's irreversibility and the importance of cooperation. Now, the summit set the stage for enhanced China-EU relations, with the upcoming China-EU summit presenting a valuable opportunity for high-level dialogue.
Globalization is nothing that any government or even governments together can make it happen. It's a historical trend, and it's a trend following the law of the economy. Whether other doors in other parts of the world will remain open or shut, we will continue to open our doors and open our doors even wider.
So this will be a great moment to develop this relationship. Both China and the European Union are very important global actors. And I repeat, if they decide to work together, the world will become better for sure.
Well, crude oil prices fell today as geopolitical risk in the Middle East and the prospect of another OPEC Plus output hike in August improved supply expectations. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude rose to $65.25 with a decline of 0.41%. Now, Brent crude sells for $67.65 with a downward margin of 0.18%. Bonnie Light sells for $78.62 with a decline of 2.84%. For the OPEC basket, dealers offer $68.13 with an uptick of 0.21%.